You're definitely early. Anytime before I do have a tendency to go off on rants whenever I hear something that's completely inaccurate. So I will be calling out any altcoining and things like that.
The government has grabbed so much power that even if your house is paid off, your property taxes can go up. We're seeing a lot of cases of this in California and in Texas, which has incredibly high property tax rates that people don't realize. You technically own your house, but do you own it if the government can seize it if you don't pay whatever they deem your property taxes are?
Bitcoin is for enemies. If he wants to accumulate either for himself or the US Treasury,
we just start printing, run the printer and buy all the Bitcoin. Let's go.
A lot better than Somali daycare centers, I'll tell you.
I come from Canada, and Justin Trudeau was my orange pillar when we had the trucker convoy.
What's the life of a mortgage? 30 years? What would happen if you were to take the difference in that mortgage, put it in Bitcoin, and then just make minimum payments over the course of 30 years?
The natural law money, I would argue, is Bitcoin. That's the fairest one because there's a fixed supply. Rather own shares of MSTR or Stretch or whatever. I mean, you're not going to get the same sort of guarantees that you have if you're self-custody.
Jimmy, welcome. OG and Bitcoin. Can you tell us a brief background about you? I know you're a programmer. You've been in Bitcoin for like 16 years. Why are you so unique to speak on this topic?
Well, I'm not entirely sure that I am unique to speak on the topic, but I do know about Bitcoin and the technical and economic aspects of it, which I think will give a very common sense perspective to the whole thing, because a lot of people think of real estate and Bitcoin as something very mysterious or something that they don't really understand, or maybe they do think they understand it, but don't really understand the economics behind it, particularly with respect to fiat money.
So you're going to keep us level-headed, though. Then you'll make sure that we stay on track.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll see. I do have a tendency to go off on rants whenever I hear something that's completely inaccurate. So I will be calling out any altcoining and things like that. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Oh, thank gosh. Dustin, so you need to take shelter because Jimmy will be coming after you directly.
You're muted.
Muted. Did you mute him, Jimmy?
No.
A few weeks ago, I dropped the alpha that the card markets were where it's at. Pokemon cards at an all-time high this week.
Sorry, Dustin. That was an accident.
Ridiculous. No, I'm legend, Jimmy. Great to have you. I know we have a great lineup as always today. I saw an interesting Bitcoin conspiracy theory today, though, that I thought would be just going to throw the chum out in the water.
Oh, cool. What's that?
Saylor is secretly buying up what will become the Bitcoin strategic reserve for the United States. Let's debate.
Okay. Yeah. Jimmy, do you think that's happening?
You're secretly buying U.S. treasuries. You just don't even know it yet.
Well, we have no idea, but I'm not concerned even if he is, because regardless, Bitcoin is for enemies. You don't need any permission from anyone to go and get it. And if he wants to accumulate either for himself or the U.S. Treasury, doesn't matter. Everyone has a right to it or can get it. And if he's accumulating, that's his prerogative.
Well, I listen. I think it actually would be brilliant. Like, I am incredibly bullish. I'm with Jimmy, right? Like, how are we going to fill the strategic reserve? We can't just take it from like criminals. Like, I guess that's probably how they're planning to do it. But
well, they could just buy it. That's what the strategic reserve bill is all about. Is the Treasury will just go buy 200,000 Bitcoin a year. I think that would be the way to do it.
We just start printing, like run the printer and buy all the Bitcoin. Let's go.
A lot better than Somali daycare centers. I'll tell you that.
Shout out to Nick Shirley and his partner Dave on that, by the way. Again, some good recognition. Should I troll? I'm in a very troll-tastic mood. The gold statue went up at Trump.
Roll away. Those are the best moments.
Pump Fund decided announced just now, no airdrop as promised, but they are burning $370 million worth of their token and then reducing the amount of revenue towards buybacks from 100% to 50%. So
yeah, sounds like typical altcoin chicanery or stupidity or whatever, trying to look legitimate or make it sound like whatever. But this is a typical central bank like manipulation of the market, and I don't see it as anything different than that. I mean, they'll do one thing one week, they'll do something else the next week. I don't really care. It's an altcoin for a reason.
you know what else we could talk about too, Dana, that I think would be really interesting with Jimmy and Leon and the crew? The what are they calling it? eCash?
Mm-hmm.
The plan.
Yeah, he announced it, I think, earlier this week, and I believe he spoke about it at the conference, if I'm not mistaken.
How do we feel about like, we'll just give some of Satoshi's wallet coins away? That seems less than ideal to me.
I mean, it's not really his coins per se. They're making a hard fork of it, so they could kind of distribute whatever coins however they want. The big thing about it is that anyone that's on Bitcoin gets it, except for Satoshi, or what they call the Protoshi coins. But I mean, that's their prerogative. I suspect it has a lot to do with their investors needing to make their money back in whatever thing that they did with Paul and, you know, funding his company for however many years. They want to make their money back. This is like an easy way for them to do it. Distribute some of these coins. It's more or less an airdrop on current Bitcoin holders, except Satoshi, which may or may not work out for them. I'm not particularly excited about it. I am excited about the possible dividend that I'm going to get, which we haven't had since 2018 or so. The fork dividends are great. And I'm sure a lot of other people are looking forward to it, especially if it has even a little bit of traction. You know, getting even like 1% or 0.5% on your Bitcoin holdings is always welcome.
I'm going to sell it right away and buy more Bitcoin.
That's what most people will be doing. Yeah.
Anyway, Dana, you want to introduce everybody else?
Tell us about your new book.
Yes. What's up, guys? Thank you for having me on. I just released a book called Digital Real Estate with Bitcoin Magazine. I'm a real estate developer myself. I'm a Bitcoiner, and I'm of the opinion that Bitcoin is the superior store of value. I think we all are. So real estate will revert back to its utility value and its productive capacity, which means that as a business, real estate will stay viable. You provide housing or commercial space for which you receive rent, but the monetary utility of housing is very low. So Bitcoin and superior store of value can be used as a tool within real estate development. And that's what I describe in my book. And the book goes beyond that. It also goes to the secondary effects of Bitcoin replacing real estate as the main or primary store of wealth, because usually, or in the mainstream at least, compare Bitcoin with digital gold. It's a nice comparison, historically speaking. Today in the financial system, people use real estate to store value and also as collateral. And Bitcoin is a superior store of value, and it's also superior collateral. So I think if we look at the total market cap of real estate, that gives a greater indication of where Bitcoin is heading.
Okay, so you guys will want to check that out. Lean, did you say you were at the conference right now? Your connection's not amazing. But
it's not good story. I am at the conference.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi there sucks. I had to come back to my hotel room to make sure that I could get it.
They're probably all trying to scam too. Like you got all the scammers coming to the conferences, airdropping, whatever. So it's probably good the Wi-Fi isn't awesome there.
Sorry, guys.
Leon, where are you from again? Are you from Sweden?
I'm from Germany. I live in Berlin.
Germany. I can never remember your accent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. From Germany.
Yeah.
My aunt was raised in Germany, so she walks around like sounds like she's yelling at people because you know the German language. It's like, but she's really just chit chatting with her girlfriend.
It is a harsh language.
What? It's good. It keeps you on your toes.
It does, yeah.
Hey Ben. Thanks.
Hi, how are you?
Give us a background on you.
My background is as an entrepreneur, primarily focused in the real estate industry. I grew up kind of a Robert Kiyosaki disciple, rich dad, poor dad. So even at a fairly young age, I was 14 when I came across his material. You know, I had the fortune of coming across the concept of fiat money from a very young age. So the idea that I was getting into real estate, not simply for the cash flow, where a lot of people would kind of focus, that's really kind of to service the debt. It's really, you're holding a hard asset, a durable hard asset against, you know, an inflating currency. And so from a young age, that's, you know, that was I used that to kind of direct my life, and went into real estate and built a small portfolio, and came across real estate, or Bitcoin rather, about 5 years ago, and went down the proverbial rabbit hole, you know, connecting some dots. I was in grade 11, and I had an economics class, and I don't precisely remember what questions I was asking, but my professor said, "You're an Austrian." And I said, "Well, how'd you know that?" Because I have Austrian descent. And he's like, no, you're an Austrian economist. And so again, and from a young age, I didn't deep dive in it, but I was aware of Hayek and Mises. And so when I came across the Bitcoin standard, and all of a sudden this Austrian economics came back into my life, it kind of connected some dots. And so spent the last 5 years focusing my time and energy in the Bitcoin space. And Leon's work, came across Leon's work, and he really put a lot of the words to what was going through my head conceptually. And so found his work very, very inspiring, and putting legs to the ideas that I was having. And so over the last few years have been divesting from real estate to go further and further into Bitcoin, as it is the superior form of store of value. And not yet have I gone into the route of using it as collateral, though I agree it is also a superior form of collateral.
Okay. Well, I'm very happy to have you. I know that you go to a lot of the conferences as well. And what are you doing and do you want to tell us what you're doing in Canada?
So the Canadian Bitcoin Conference has been going on now. We'll be coming up to our 4th year. I was not involved with the conference themselves, or the organizers, but I was their first guest. I was there 2 days early to be available to help set up. And over the years have developed a strong relationship with Daniel and Manuela and Wasim and Nicole. And in this past year, I was fortunate to get to speak on the intersection of real estate and Bitcoin as collateral. I got to panel host with Lawrence Lepard, which was a real thrill and an honor, as well as the True North crew. And I am kind of getting more involved with the group themselves in terms of organization. And so we have an event coming up in October that I could speak to maybe further into the podcast. But yeah, excited about that.
Okay, cool. So anyone in Canada can hit you up and go to the conference there. And we have Rich, tell us about yourself.
Hey, Dana. Yeah, thanks for having me back on. So I've been having most of my adult life in the corporate world at NASDAQ, primarily in investor relations and the equities markets. But my own personal investing journey is primarily in real estate and gold. Understanding hard money, but then like you touched on the cash flow aspect of real estate, first got involved in Bitcoin in the blow off top in 2017. And then, rode all the way down in 2018, 2019 to start to learn more about it. When March of 2020 hit, it really clicked in my mind that, these gold and Bitcoin guys, everything they discussed, a black swan event comes about. The book gets thrown out, drop interest rates to zero, fire hose the system with money, textbook inflation. I mean, I did major in economics, but you don't need to major in economics to understand what the ramifications of doing that would be. So since March 2020, I became convicted in sound money and went deep down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. Came across Michael Saylor in August of 2020 and really solidified the difference between both gold and Bitcoin, and then as well real estate. Thinking about, it's great, you have a hard asset, it cash flows, but looking at the opportunity cost when one is giving up in storing value relative to Bitcoin, and then that same realization relative to gold, and seeing how Bitcoin improves significantly on all of the deficiencies that real estate and gold have. It becomes glaringly obvious that if you're looking to not only preserve but also grow your wealth, Bitcoin is just the most obvious idea as to where you would want to store the majority of your net worth. So anyway, I've been down the rabbit hole really since 2020, and then I'm active in the Bitcoin communities. I'm at the conferences. I'm in Vegas right now, and yeah, happy to add to the discussion.
Okay, so let's get into this. So Dustin, if you want to throw the curveballs and go into another topic, no problem, we can. But I just want to know from everyone first, are we all still early? Jimmy, I know that you think that we still are, even though you've been here for like over, 15 years. I'm going to guess everybody is going to say yes. Am I right about that or no? Is someone like
Yeah, no, you're right about that. Of course we're early.
Okay.
We're early because the world isn't on a Bitcoin standard yet, and a lot of people are nervous because it's going to go back down. Well, all of the incentives, all of the headwinds are for Bitcoin, and over the long term, it gets better and better for Bitcoin because fiat money printing is inevitable for all kinds of reasons, and that's not going to stop. As Lynn Alden likes to say, nothing stops this train. The money printing will continue. And there's nothing really stopping it. There aren't enough forces, other than maybe Bitcoin itself, slowing it down. And that's it's an inevitable thing. And if you have an understanding of where the economics of the money supply are going, then yeah, you're definitely early. Anytime before the collapse of the fiat system is pretty much going to be early.
What do you guys think about this comment? I don't know how I think about Bitcoin because I'm not a fan of money being all digital. I think this, for example, I don't know your name, ma'am or sir, but I think that they would prefer to have a paid off house over a Bitcoin in this case. It's more familiar. It's also probably higher in value right now. Would you all agree with that? Or what would you prefer? Would you prefer a paid off house or a Bitcoin right now?
I think it'd be foolish to go the paid. I mean, that's financially illiterate to take a paid off house over a Bitcoin, or just having a house that's financed and allowing you to acquire more Bitcoin now and then sit on that over what's the life of a mortgage, 30 years? What would happen if you were to take the difference in that mortgage, put it in Bitcoin, and then just make minimum payments over the course of 30 years? The Bitcoin would appreciate massively relative to the house. So although it gives someone maybe a sense of financial security, then sure. And it all depends on which stage of life you're in. I mean, if you have $100 million or you're super wealthy already and you just say, I just want to buy my house and just have it paid off, sure. But like the vast majority of people that really do need to grow their wealth, it's a foolish financial decision. And his specific comment about not liking all money being digital, that's an argument I used to hear all the time from people in the gold community. Oh, well, what if the electricity goes out? Or, there's something about just holding a piece of gold in your hand. You could feel it, and it gives them some sort of, peace of mind, the physical nature of it. But the physical nature is the biggest flaw in it. It's not divisible. It's not transportable. So so no, I think I think those are things. I mean, everyone's on a different path in their journey and has answered these questions along the way. But I think if the person were to dig deeper into it, I think they'd see Bitcoin solves a lot of the problems that they currently see as maybe pain points.
And I would just say, yeah, what aspect of our current system is not already digital, right? Like, you do not hold your cash reserves underneath your mattress, right? You go to the bank, your money is digital. Bitcoin's cryptographic, and you hold it on a blockchain that is permissionless and immutable. So, you know, I come from Canada, and Justin Trudeau was my orange pillar when we had the trucker convoy. And, you know, I woke up one day and found out that financial assets can be frozen. You know, we had our finance minister who was quite gleeful at the idea that they were able to use the financial tool, to use her words, to freeze bank accounts. So there's nothing about our current system that already isn't digital. You are at the restraint of the financial intermediaries to be able to get access to your stored labor, right? The value of your life's work is in a bank where they're rehypothecating it, and it's what, 90 to 1, or yeah. So it's you have the opportunity to take ownership of your own labor on the blockchain with Bitcoin, and you become a global citizen. You be able to fight back over any oversight or authoritative oppression on your work and your labor.
Also, can you hear me, guys, by the way, better now?
Yes.
Cool. I just want to add, I agree with you guys, of course. I think that, I mean, I like cash as well. I like privacy of using a credit card all the time. But then we can use Cashew, for example, with Bitcoin. So I think the question of privacy makes sense. And if you want privacy in digital space, that's why we actually need Bitcoin. So everything is running digitally anyway. So then the question is, how can we have digital scarcity? And once we have digital scarcity, which we have with Bitcoin, we need other private layers built adjacent to it. So, for example, other tokens that are backed by Bitcoin, they give the privacy of cash in the digital space. So I think there's use cases for cash, of course, for digital cash, but it needs to be backed by Bitcoin.
Yeah, I have one a little bit of a quibble with what you guys are saying. I think the question kind of implies, you know, I would rather have a paid off house than Bitcoin, and in a sense, like that, it's kind of a wrong framing, right? Because when you're in debt for a house, you actually have only a small percentage of the equity on the house. That's not historically normal. In a fiat world, that's completely normal because mortgages are subsidized by the central bank, basically, and they make the interest rates artificially low, which is why, as Mitch said, it's a better financial decision. But at the same time, like you know, owning real estate has this property where you're getting debased every year, not just from the fact that you have poor materials or whatever, but it degrades, right? Like any asset in the real world just kind of degrades. If you've owned a home for 30 years, it's not like it's brand new. You have to maintain it. You have to pay taxes on it. You have to, you know, things break, or there might be disaster, or you know, all kinds of things happen, right? And it's not a pristine asset, which Bitcoin definitely is, right? It doesn't degrade at all. It stays the same year over year, and this is why it's a much better thing. And this is kind of true of all physical objects, even stuff like gold. If you've studied the gold industry, and I have, you can get a 400-ounce bar, and what happens with a 400-ounce bar is that over time it loses some of the ounces on it. So at the beginning, they usually make it like 400.5 ounces. After about 10, 20 years, it's like 399.6 ounces. Even gold, which is supposed to be this pristine, non-reactive metal that is about as great as it can be in the physical world, is not entirely durable. And this is the advantage of having something digital, is that it doesn't degrade at all. Houses do, even gold does, and that's an important thing to consider when you are thinking about the long term. The other thing that I want to point out is that yes, it might be an economically rational decision to have a loan on the house, but from a moral perspective, I think it's actually better to have a paid off house because you're not in debt. Every dollar that you borrow is adding to the money supply. And in a sense, you are actually stealing from everybody else who is owning that dollar, owning the rest of the dollars that are in existence. So the $500,000 mortgage that you might get from the bank adds $500,000 to the money supply because it does not come from savings. It is printed on your behalf so that you can afford the house. And that's something that a lot of people don't like to hear because they like to play the game and get the fairly low or at least relatively low interest rates so that they can afford the house and make money on it. But this is also why housing is so expensive, because you artificially make the interest rates on housing low. That means that the price of the housing itself goes up in response. And this is kind of the trap that a lot of central banks get into, is that they've artificially made real estate cost way more than it should be, and they're under pressure to keep it high, and that's unfortunately the situation we find ourselves in. As you know, even Trump has said, "Hey, I want to keep the prices of homes high." Why? Because a lot of people have a lot of their equity, and this is a systemic problem, and I think getting off of the debt, getting off of the money printing, and getting off of the fiat standard would be very beneficial for stuff like that.
I think to your point, that makes not incurring debt, and I mean, yeah, it's if you can go buy your house outright, then that's certainly a nice feeling. But then the opportunity cost of buying a house outright, the amount of that cost over time in Bitcoin terms is absolutely massive, and it's really hard to make a rational financial decision about actually buying a house versus just simply renting. And just sitting.
And this is true of anything that you buy. You could buy a camera. The opportunity cost versus Bitcoin is enormous. You can buy anything, right? And I mean, houses just tend to be more expensive, so people are more sensitive to it. But this is just, this is what makes Bitcoin so powerful, in that the people that are selling stuff to you have to have such a high quality of good that you're not willing to part with the Bitcoin unless it is a really good quality thing. And this happens all over in a sound money economy. The houses that are built today are crap compared to the stuff that was built 200 years ago. They're still standing, a lot of the houses that were built 200 years ago in Europe. And the reason for it was because people were not willing to part with their money unless they got really good value for it. And that causes more innovation, that causes people to provide more quality in the goods that they actually buy. So that's overall a good thing. It might sound scary because of all of the opportunity costs, but that exact calculation is what you want in a society that is constantly improving.
So first, to our digital person, you're right to be concerned about digital money and tracking and debanking. Like, these are all things that we've suffered and are not good, and are empowered by things like CBDCs and stable coins. There is a huge difference, like, under this umbrella of like outsiders who are quote unquote like digital money or cryptocurrency. There is dramatic differences between tyrannical, authoritarian enabling digital currencies and freedom enabling digital products like Bitcoin. Like, dramatic and serious differences. One leads to the ability for the government to grab all kinds of new authoritarian control, and one gives you the power inside your own because you're your own bank, you hold your own money, you're in control, the supply is fixed, right? All of the good stuff that we always talk about. So I want to point out there is a serious danger around the digitization of all transactions. So if you read the Bank of International Settlements white paper on central bank digital currencies and cryptocurrency, right? It's their goal is to create a unified ledger of all exchanges of value between different entities. Now, that being so that they can tax, control, overrule, veto any of those things. So you're right to be concerned. Like I want to be clear. I love Bitcoin, but people should be concerned about how the confluence of digital currency and unified ledgers, plus AI and pattern recognition and being able to go through large data sets, like that is a real concern. And as somebody who was debanked from my political views 2 months before the 2020 election, man, you better have alternatives and be thinking about these things. It goes down to, right, but that's a rabbit hole that you can take as deep and as far as you want to go. Now, Jimmy here, Jimmy is not, and I want to congratulate, I appreciate Jimmy because I also am not on board with the 50-year mortgage. I'm almost as opposed to it as I, right? The concern I have about paying off your house is that we live in a society where the government has grabbed so much power that even if your house is paid off, your property taxes can go up. And we're seeing a lot of cases of this in California and in Texas, which has incredibly high property tax rates that people don't realize. You technically own your house, but do you own it if the government can seize it if you don't pay whatever they deem your property taxes are? And that property tax is based on an appraisal of your home, not what you actually paid for it. And so that number can, go up much higher than your income did, even if your house is paid off. So again, to me, the system is so overwhelmingly broken that you should be looking for off-ramps and stability, Bitcoin being the most pristine, proven, and verifiable of all those things.
I have a question, Dustin. Sorry, but have you looked into Lightning and Cashew, for example?
I have looked at Lightning. I haven't. Listen, I think that we'll see the adoption coming on that. I do a lot of work in the payment space at large scale. And right now, Solana is winning that game. As far as being able to handle the level of volume that's necessary. It'll be interesting to see if Lightning
but that's a central ledger. Sorry to interrupt you. Just
you're comparing apples to oranges, buddy.
Yeah, because what you said made sense in the sense of you need privacy, but Solana is a centralized ledger, so it doesn't matter what the transaction throughput is, as long as there's no value being transferred, because Solana is not digitally absolutely scarce. So what you're actually doing is you're creating a fee structure for a company to make money. So you're actually being like found.
I am in the camp that there are different, you want different aspects for different things. My favorite is probably Doge, which originally was created by a bunch of Bitcoin nerds like ourselves, right, to be the worst possible form of money. And I believe that they accidentally stumbled on like an actual use case that makes sense, which is I don't want, let's say that I want to do a super chat on this video or whatever. I don't want to give my Bitcoin to that, right? Like I don't want to look back. I don't want to be the Bitcoin pizza guy and be like, I spent a gajillion dollars on 2 pizzas back in the day. Like that, I know we joke about it, but that shit would hurt me inside. So Doge, with its ever inflating supply, actually makes sense for something like micro tipping, right? If I want to send somebody a couple bucks, then I think that'll be it. So the same is true, which is I think everybody should be very concerned. You want to have your bins in different areas to be protected in all outcomes.
And I think that's a completely.
For me, I was waiting.
Because we're seeing on Nostr people tipping like tiny amounts all over the place, whereas Doge tipping still isn't really that popular. It was popular maybe back in like 2016 or something like that. You don't have different currencies for different use cases. You don't use your airline points to go shopping at the grocery store. You don't like that. Having different currencies is a way to trap you into a particular ecosystem. That's all it is. And I don't think there's room for more than one reserve currency or one major currency, at least in a natural setting, not the artificial one that we have. And that's the way the world was right up until the advent of central banking. Everybody was on the gold standard. Everyone standardized on the gold standard, even though some were on silver, but they were incentivized to go to gold because that's what everyone else was on. It makes trade much, much easier. Now, like, is it like more incentivized to spend when you have a higher inflating thing? Yeah, absolutely. And this is why the Venezuelan bolivar is one of the highest velocity currencies in the world, because it's hyperinflating and no one wants to hold it. That doesn't make it a good thing. That's actually a terrible thing for everyone in Venezuela, especially with the legal tender laws and things like that, which make it so that everyone is forced to lose money and suffer from stealth taxation that inflation actually is, and it's an insane amount of taxation. So I don't believe that different things have different use cases, and I don't think Solana has any value whatsoever. It's a centralized shitcoin. It's a private central bank, and it's enriching the people that own Solana, and that created Solana essentially. Their inflation is ridiculously high, and that's the unfortunate reality. And a lot of people don't like it because I'm telling them that their baby is ugly. But sorry, your baby's ugly.
Listen, you're not gonna hurt my feelings, but like again, I've been doing this at large scales, and when I looked at like if I want to process billions of transactions, am I doing it on Bitcoin or am I doing it on something that has more?
Yeah, you could also do it at the Federal Reserve. Fed now can probably do 10 times that, right? Like they have systems that are way more throughput or whatever by being completely centralized. That's not the point. If you want to go do that, go for it. And if you want speed, then like I said, the Venezuelan bolivar has almost infinite speed, right? Like people want to get rid of it. No one wants to hold it. That doesn't make it a good money. It might make it easy for you to, I guess send out like one Doge to 1 million people or something like that. But I don't think that's what makes for good money. I don't think it has that much value. And
Enrich Lending is building the most transparent borrowing experience in crypto. Get industry-leading rates from 8.49% APR, borrow against Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Solana, and receive USD or USDC within minutes. Your assets stay protected with qualified custody, no rehypothecation, and verifiable segregated addresses. As your collateral grows, unlock more liquidity, adjust your line anytime, and extend your term with a single click. And with 24/7 white glove support, you're never on your own. Arch Lending, simple tiers, public pricing, market leading rates at every size. Check them out at archlending.com/debates. Again, it's archlending.com/debates. Use code debates to get 50 basis points off your APR on your crypto back loan today.
I'll let other people chime in if they want. Listen, I'm happy to take the contrarian position on this. It never bothers me.
Yeah, but it's by the way, I don't want to like everybody's attacking you with a bunch of Bitcoiners, so it's probably not a good position to be in. But I do want to just make a comment from the aspect of monetary theory. It takes a lot of time for money to be, let's say, a standard, because when we look at gold, it took thousands of years for gold to be standard. We are like 15 years into this Bitcoin journey, and we are used to a fast-paced life. But actually, if we talk about transaction throughput, we need to give the blockchain and also other second layers like maybe 100 or 200 years to be established. I think we are having, like, sometimes, generally speaking, the wrong view on money, because if we think about transaction throughput, PayPal works great, or like what you said, the Federal Reserve works great. But that's not the point. Money actually needs to be a good store of value. From that, quality and the transactional demand kind of comes secondary. So people accept money that they think other people accept in the future. So money is not good money just because you can spend it. That actually just causes consumption to spike. Also is part of the idea of taxing. If you really think about it, why do states want to be able to control the payment system? It's because they can tax you. And the same is true for Solana. Solana has absolutely no privacy, because before you said, I think you talked about the Bank of International Settlement, which very truly is a horrible institution. They even functioned under the Second World War, and they also worked together with the Nazis at the time. So they are an evil institution. But if we talk about Solana or Ethereum, these are centralized companies. So there's absolutely no reason for me to look at it, even compare it with Bitcoin. It's almost like these are demonized entities that want to kind of make people not see what Bitcoin is. So I do think that looking at Solana, you can look at it, and if you're a trader, yes, you can make a short. If you want to trade Solana, you can trade it, sure, with a short time frame. In a Bitcoin bull market, it might outperform Bitcoin short term, but there's actually absolutely no monetary utility in Solana.
So I want to touch on this because the person we were responding to, right, was asking, like, I'm uncomfortable about Bitcoin because I don't want all money to be digital. And I think that's a reasonable concern for a lot of different reasons, right? The biggest being creeping authoritarianism and the loss of our God-given inherent human rights that, like, have been steadily chipped away since the Constitution. But the reason being, I think it's important because I think that most people outside of our ecosystem, like outside of our bubble, lump Bitcoin together with things like Solana. I am not trying to make the claim that Solana in any way has the same powers that make Bitcoin. The reason the Bitcoin's the big dog on the block, the fixed limited supply, the decentralized computing power and network, and through rate. So all of those things that make Bitcoin great, people lump all outside of our ecosystem, though. People lump all of this stuff together. And I think it's important for people to understand the difference between something that empowers regular people like Bitcoin and something that may have real life use cases that solve other inefficiencies and problems in the market, which I see Solana doing. I think Jimmy would love to disagree with that, right? But while it's fixing those things, it's not protecting your privacy and security in any way. And that's something that I think people need to understand. I also think it's something that Bitcoin needs to look at, which is because Bitcoin is so decentralized, and Gary used to say this on the show all the time, we don't have like a fixed marketing team. We don't have coordinated messaging. Our messaging is all over the place. I think that we have a serious divide between how we look at all these different things and how other people, which is they lump them all together. If you're looking at just crypto and digital currency more broadly, yes, you should be concerned, but it should lead you to some of the solutions because there are brilliant people in the space who have been working on these solutions for a long time.
Well, I mean, there might or might not be brilliant people, but the big reason why crypto and Bitcoin has been lumped together is because exactly the people that are promoting these things, they want to be associated with Bitcoin. They see the price of Bitcoin having gone up over the last 16 years, and they want to be associated with it, basically suggesting to everybody else, hey, we're going to go up the same way that Bitcoin has. And I blame a lot of the VCs, a lot of token founders, a lot of the foundations, and all of these people for making that confusion, right? Like they're not trying to make that distinction anywhere because they want to be associated with Bitcoin and its 17 years of amazing history and its solidness and its decentralization. They want to be associated with all of that. And the question that you always have to ask yourself when people are saying, oh, but they're so brilliant and they got this technology and this and whatever, is why do you then need a token? If it's really that great, why didn't you build it on Bitcoin? Because you wanted to scam people, right? Like that's the only reason. It's so that you could fund yourself by selling it into a gullible public instead of actually building on Bitcoin. You could do some sort of sidechain thing. You can make a layer 2. You could do all kinds of other things. It can be centralized even, right? And that's okay. But the people that do run stuff like Solana and Ethereum and all these other things, they wanted to make their money, right? And this was their way of grifting and getting money from the public, is by associating themselves with Bitcoin and then selling these useless tokens out so that they can make money and they can scam people. And that's the part that I have a big issue with. Maybe the speed of transaction is great on Solana. I personally don't think so. I think centralized systems like Visa, MasterCard, and all these other things can do way more throughput, and they've proven to be able to do that. That doesn't make them better. It's that the speed of transaction is not the problem that people have. What the problem that people have is that they're not able to save effectively. They're using stuff like real estate because their dollar doesn't hold value, and stocks go up and down, and there's like all kinds of barriers to doing all of that. The reason why Bitcoin is valuable is because it's a great store of value. And if you do have tech that is supposedly groundbreaking and brilliant or whatever, why do you need a token? You don't need a token. What you do need is Bitcoin. And it's always frustrated me how many people make this VC-backed argument about how altcoins are special and interesting, and then sort of hand wave away the fact that they have a token, which is completely and utterly unnecessary.
I mean, listen, but the Bitcoin price go up is largely a result of manipulation, right? Like the printing of stable coins with Tether has artificially increased.
Wait. You can't just assert something like that without any evidence. All of Bitcoin price is because somebody's manipulating it. Where's your evidence for that? The reason anything goes up is because there's more demand than supply. We know the supply of Bitcoin is 21 million. Okay, as demand goes up, price tends to go up because there's a fixed supply. I don't think that's controversial at all.
No, but without a doubt, the printing of Tether, right, has artificially increased. What Saylor is doing is like artificially increasing the price.
What do you mean by artificial? If somebody is buying something, then that's going, and there's a fixed supply. Yeah, that's going to cause the price to go up. To say that it's artificial or suggesting that it's nefarious in some way, especially without evidence, by saying stuff like Tether is printing money, or like, or I don't know, doing something like that. I think that's a little bit disingenuous and kind of like not really backing up your argument very much there.
I'm just curious, like, you're saying that Tether did not print dollars to buy Bitcoin, and that didn't cause the price to go up?
I mean, I don't know what they did. I just know that like most dollars in existence are printed into existence through loans. So, I mean, if you want to say that all of Bitcoin price rise is the dollar debasing, I'm not really going to argue with you that much. I think that's true.
All right, we agree on that. Again, I think it's good for us to have some debate on this, but the point being that I think Bitcoin actually hurts itself trying to be everything to everyone on all of these cases, which is I think Bitcoin has found a lane that's incredibly powerful with what we all talk about, store of value, the world's most pristine collateral. I think trying to turn it into everything else is actually just a loss long term for it.
But what would you define as money? Like, what's your view on money? Because if something is a good store of value, then from that monetary properties arise and monetary utility. So it could even be possible that people don't spend their Bitcoin in the future. People could hold Bitcoin, they can spend a token like a cashew, for example, a cashew mint, like a Monster, for example, that is backed by Bitcoin, which then has higher transaction throughput. But Bitcoin would serve as the monetary base. So why would Bitcoin by itself need to do all these things at the same time? Why do you think that?
it's not that I think that there are superior alternatives on some of these different fronts. And again, I think when you really dive into monetary policy, the idea that that a fixed monetary supply is always beneficial in all cases, I don't think that holds up.
For money, maybe it's beneficial to whom, right? That's a real question. It's very beneficial for the federal government to be able to expand the money supply because they can spend money that they don't have. That's essentially what they're doing. The most just money, the natural law money, I would argue, is Bitcoin. That's the fairest one because there's a fixed supply, and that makes it good. It means that the proportion of Bitcoin that you have relative to the entire supply stays fixed. That's a great thing. That means that no one can steal from you by expanding it.
I guess the use case that I would use, right, which is that I've looked at fairly recently, like China's difficulties to stimulate the economy through what we can do in America, which is direct incentives to give because people just like hoard and save. Like I think there are use cases where you want money to be in circulation and not to be different. That there is room for us to bifurcate these different things and these different layers in order for it to make sense. Bitcoin, for all of the reasons of fairness that you just talked about, like, again, that's why I don't want to spend my Bitcoin with people. I don't want to use my Bitcoin to go do my regular daily things because I'm going to have to look at the book 10 years from now and be like, if I just held it, I would have 100x'd whatever I was holding on to, right? I see these different lanes, and I think it makes sense to use them as different lanes.
Well, if you really believe that, you would have all your money in Bitcoin, at which point you'd have no other choice than to spend Bitcoin for the things that you need, like food to eat or, a house to rent or a car to rent or whatever. That's like, I guess you have multiple assets and you'd rather spend those first than Bitcoin. I think that's perfectly reasonable. But to say that,
it's not. People have savings accounts and they have checking accounts, right? Mm-hmm. And your savings account, you should be using differently than you are using your checking account. And
right, but if the regret is the thing that you're saying, then I think a lot of Bitcoiners fall into this bucket where they hold all their assets in Bitcoin because they think all the other monies are sucky. At which point you would be spending the Bitcoin for your daily stuff. Which people do, and I think that's normal. That's the rational thing to do in the case that you have, and not holding multiple assets and only spending one and saving in the other. At some point, you just sort of run out of the one that you're spending.
Would you guys agree, though, that so we all kind of agree that Bitcoin is the gold standard for digital currency, but I think what Dustin is saying is, if we were to think about this in the middle, first I could ask, what do you guys think about treasury companies then? But also, Solana, these other tokens, we don't really know maybe what is going to solve these problems. Jimmy's like, there's no problem, right? Visa fixes it, and these other payment companies can fix this, like FedNow. But is it possible, though, that there will be some sort of token or rewards? I think of these other tokens as kind of like a reward system for companies, and you can have more flexibility. You can kind of utilize them in our economy to transfer assets and have certain rewards. Maybe you can do it a lot faster. Is there any sort of situation where you see any other solution or different digital currency working for that? Or no, you're just no, just Bitcoin, that's it.
Well, yeah, I think the reason companies do it, you can figure that out, right? Why do airlines have airline miles? That's basically the currency of that particular airline. Why do they do that? It's to trap you into their ecosystem. It's so that you won't go to another ecosystem and so on. And you could think of fiat currencies the same way. Why aren't you, why does, why do all these different jurisdictions have their own currency? It's so that you're trapped into their ecosystem, and you're not like spending some more liquid currency somewhere else. And that's you know, you could understand it from sort of the authorities' perspective, from the state's perspective, but for the individual, it doesn't gain you anything, right? Would Venezuelans rather have the dollar than the bolivar? Absolutely, right? It's holding value much better. It's way more liquid. They can go out, go outside the country and spend it and so on. Whereas their bolivars, they're not going to be able to spend anywhere else. So, in a sense, the tokenization, having a different token for each thing, it's a way to trap the individual. It is good for the ruling entity and not for the individual. So it's not really solving anything for me or for the people that are using it. It's really for the benefit of the authorities, of the state, of the people that control the currency itself. And this is why I think for the individual, at an individual incentive level, Bitcoin is it. That if you're going to give up there's no reason to give up decentralization for any of these other things. Maybe it's a little faster or whatever, but even then, it's trade in, trade out, something like that, which is what a lot of people do with the dollar, right? Like I can't, Walgreens across the street won't take my Bitcoin, so I transfer it to dollars first, or even Walgreens gift cards or whatever, and then go buy it and not suffer too much slippage or whatever. But the world doesn't need a million currencies, and that's been the case in a lot of places. And all of these other currencies actually just end up adding a lot of friction and giving power to those that control it.
How very centralized of you to want to demand everybody stay in the Bitcoin ecosystem, right?
No, I'm just saying that's the incentive that we have, and it's the incentive of the controllers to control you so that they can make more profit, that they can tax you in some way, shape, or form without you getting much benefit.
I see where. Okay, go ahead, Dustin.
Go ahead, Dana.
Well, I was just going to say, I see where you're coming from, Jimmy, and there are a lot of scams. Like, let's be honest, that's very true. However, incentives do dictate the outcomes. Companies do behave in this way. So, can we agree that probably in the future, there will be other currencies that are operating in the way that we described, whether it's moral or immoral or not? That is probably where we're headed.
Yeah, I think that's right. We'll have airline miles with us for a while yet. It's funny how they always seem to survive bankruptcy and so on. Yeah, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, yeah. But the thing is, the companies that are on a Bitcoin standard, the ones that are operating honestly, will get more trust from their customers. So right now, a lot of these companies that do these things are not operating that efficiently, right? Like airline miles, places, and countries with their own central banks and stuff like that. If people had an alternative, right? If they weren't bound by legal tender laws and all this other stuff, they would use, especially in like developing countries, they would much rather use the dollar as an everyday currency. They're just kind of forced to by the barrel of a gun. So in a sense, I think it's inevitable because people are evil, that you will have these closed off silos. But if you're in any sort of like fair market system, right? I think the ones that build on Bitcoin will win every single time, just because consumers don't like that, that you're forced into a particular kind of system, and a lot of them are subsidized by fiat money in any case. So airline miles being definitely one of them. So I do think that you're right that these are inevitable, but like they're evil things, and I don't think we should act like they're wonderful things because they exist. I don't think that's the case at all.
What do you think about treasury companies?
Personally, I think exposure to Bitcoin is not Bitcoin, and I think it's a terrible lesson for a lot of people. And we've seen this movie before. We saw with GBTC, for example, how much damage it caused the entire ecosystem with people trying to use that ARB, and that led to Luna, Celsius, and FTX, and all the rest. That the money essentially, that whole trade is essentially collapsing. I'm not a big fan of it, and I think it's setting us back in some ways. But ultimately, I think people will figure it out, and they'll learn a harsh lesson whenever something bad happens. If we get, say, like a 6102 style attack, where the government decides to seize all the treasuries of a public company because they need to make up the deficit in some way or something like that. So.
Okay, I wanna ask all of you guys, if you all if I just dropped $100,000 into your wallet right now, where would you place it? It can be Pokemon cards, Charizard, whatever you want. Where in percentages are you putting that cash? Jimmy?
Well, I mean, depends on the time frame, right? I mean, like, is that the only money I have, or is it like mostly say I have other money and this is mostly
it's the only money you have. You lost everything in a fire, and now you're starting over and you have $100,000.
And the insurance company gives me $100,000. What would I do?
No, insurance doesn't work. Oh yeah. Sure.
Something like that. So I would say I probably put 80% into Bitcoin and 20% for day-to-day rebuilding stuff. I'm probably gonna need to go put in a deposit for a house or whatever, and that's mostly for convenience. If it were something else, like this was extra money that I won in a lottery or something, then I would put it all into Bitcoin.
Okay, not in Solana. I'm just kidding. I'm just trying to.
Good joke, Dana. Good joke.
But Dustin, where are you putting it?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm buying a bunch of boxes of Pokemon cards, and then I'm probably going to pay for a nice large clipping campaign for the show, so our views go way up, and we get all kinds of famous celebrity. And then with whatever's left over, I'll probably throw half in Bitcoin, half in Solana.
Okay. Okay, Ben.
And so this is my only $100,000 right now.
Your only $100,000 first, and then next you have to say if it's just extra $100,000.
Well, I guess I would probably put 25% into Bitcoin and the rest into digital credit product like Stretch, where I would generate yield that would ideally stay at par. This introduces risk. I totally agree with Jimmy. Like, I am a Bitcoiner, a sovereign individual. Though Bitcoin is the most liquid market in the world, but it's not the most accessible. Or acceptable. Like, if I go to purchase my food at a restaurant, they're not accepting Bitcoin. So I would focus on my craft and acquire as much Bitcoin as I could. Though I would probably put a large percentage into Stretch, ideally maintaining my par value, generate yield while focusing on acquiring more Bitcoin.
Leon?
Yes. So simple would be 80,000 into Bitcoin, 20 into just keep it in cash. But in Germany, for example, or in some jurisdictions in Europe, you can lend against Bitcoin tax-free, and you can even do it peer-to-peer. So you could use Abify, for example, that sit in Riga, and you could anonymously or pseudonymously find somebody that lends you cash against your Bitcoin. So you could put 100,000 in Bitcoin, lend 40,000 against it, put another 20,000 in Bitcoin, and live off 20,000.
Interesting.
Was also just following up on that, on the moral aspect, because Jimmy said at the beginning you find it immoral to lend against Bitcoin because it increases the money supply, and I understand that. But for example, peer-to-peer lending, you can find Bitcoiners that sit on large amounts of cash, and they want short-term return, and they, for example, blend the cash that they own. Maybe they made it in the business, so that is not newly created money. So if you want to pay attention to the moral, ethical aspect, which I totally understand, you could do it with peer-to-peer lending product. Even.
Yeah, I've heard this. The only question I would have is if you trace that money back, it always goes back to some form of money printing. That's the only thing. And I mean, I am more sympathetic to the idea that people lending from savings is a more legitimate form of a loan, but oftentimes it's not so easy to figure that out, and it's not entirely obvious, right? So somebody might be lending you that, but they took a second mortgage out on their house, and you just don't know. What you get from this peer-to-peer market is just somebody that's giving you money. You have no idea in what way it actually came from. So it's a little more difficult than that than you would think.
Yep.
Okay, so a bit of risk involved, but a little less risky, you think, than other options. I feel like
using it as digital real estate.
Reeling everyone in to just do, Bitcoin only, like everyone just shut up and focus on what's important. Dustin's like, I'm gonna go get my Pokemon cards and bury them underground. Okay.
Yeah, we haven't talked about, like, I believe the best investments are always, and in all seriousness, investing in your own talents and skills, and then investing in your own quality of life and the things that surround you. So, right, like the beautiful thing about being a prepper is that whether or not the bad thing you're prepping for comes true or not, you almost always benefit from localizing your supply chain and knowing how to do your own food and water, etc. Like all of those things bring peace of mind, and there's no value. Even Bitcoin's not as valuable as peace of mind and quality.
Do you identify as a prepper?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Of course you. I can't believe I didn't know this. Do you have a bunker?
I actually took
Oxton, come on! Like, don't make him tell you all his plans and like.
I don't need to know where it is.
No,
okay.
But I took inspiration from the Bitcoin node network and built a low-tech comm system with other preppers all over the country.
Very cool. I gotta up my game. Okay, Mitch, where are you putting your $100,000?
What was it? Those two scenarios.
Yeah, this is your only $100,000 first.
Forever.
Only 100,000, and then 100,000 if it was spare.
Yeah.
Yes.
If my only 100,000, I'd probably just go 100K in Bitcoin. Like, you should have your Bitcoin stack. If you have a Bitcoin stack now, in the second scenario, it's extra. As of like right now, as a day, I'd probably dump it all into MetaPlanet. It's about trading about 1x MNAV. I would probably do that. Or if not that, I'd split it between MetaPlanet and MSTR. Yeah, that's what I would do.
Okay, Jimmy?
A lot of people seem to like these leveraged Bitcoin products. I'm like much more skeptical of their viability, especially over the long term. Personally, just like there's so many risks that you're taking. The government can seize it, the company can be, doing something shady, or Michael Saylor might die, and somebody else takes it over and sells it. There's so many ways in which it could go wrong. Whereas if you hold your Bitcoin in a hardware wallet, it's only you, right? Like it's astonishing to me how many people don't seem to care that much about self-custody. I don't know.
Yeah, but I would say it's an equity investment. It's not savings. Bitcoin's it's savings technology, and stock. It's an equity investment. You have management teams. You have jurisdictional risk. You have every risk that goes along with running a company and entrusting that in other people, to the management team to make correct decisions to, over the long run, create shareholder value, and then ultimately, outperform, in Bitcoin terms, which, companies like MSTR, since BSC started, has outperformed, Bitcoin quite a bit, even with this big drawdown. And even going back to the point earlier, are we early? Like I heard you mention, Dana, it's like, well, buy a house, have a paid off house relative to Bitcoin. Like if someone were to give me that proposition right now, you could have the value of the paid off house or take that entire value and buy it in Bitcoin, but your cost base is going to be 126,000. Say you bought the very top of Bitcoin. I'd rather take the Bitcoin and write it down and take a 50% haircut like that and hold it for the long term relative to holding a house. And I think with some of these other, equity investments, stuff like MSTR and Metaplanet, yeah, I mean, I fully hear you, Jim. I mean, like, I believe me, I hear you, and I'm on your side on a lot of that. But I think there can be, if Bitcoin does what we do think it will ultimately do, and CAGR, what we think it will over a 10, 20-year period, if companies like the tier one companies like an MSTR or Metaplanet, can execute over that amount of time span, like it could provide material outperformance for those who are willing to stick around. And I think that's the biggest issue I see in the space right now is high time preference versus low time preference. As Bitcoiners, we should be low time preference focused and looking out for the long term, not trying to get just small wins here or there. But if someone's in it for the long term, I think it could be some of the best performing equities in the entire market.
I don't know. It sounds like a lot like the argument for leverage trading. Like that, I get that you get additional yield on it, but you also have the risk of losing it all. And I just don't think that trade-off is worth it, especially when it's dependent on other people that may or may not be acting properly. So for me, self-sovereignty is worthwhile, and the trade-off isn't worth it, especially with all the centralized entities that you end up having to trust. Not the least of which is your government, who might or might not eventually seize the coins in public companies like Strategy.
Yeah. Make a comment. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Yeah, great. No, just jumping in. I think like if you take the self-sovereign aspect, like Bitcoin and self-custody, that's it. I mean, there's almost no discussion. And then if you take the argument of you're an investor, so to say, and maybe you're restricted by regulation. I don't know. Maybe you're a pension fund or you are an entity that operates, let's say, within the world of real estate or investing, and you don't care about self-sovereignty, just put it out there, and you're just looking for a tax-efficient return. I do see why a Metaplanet, for example, or strategy is interesting from an investment perspective. I totally do. But it just kind of comes down to what's most important. Is it the return on the dollar, say, or is it like the self-sovereign aspect? So that also comes to a philosophical aspect. It's not just the return.
Yeah, I forgot to make my 10,000 buy-in to the World Series of Poker. I forgot that one. But that's definitely good.
Yeah, and that's an important point. I think people have different things that they're optimizing for. If you're optimizing for highest returns given risk or whatever, that might be it. But if you're optimizing for the worst case scenario and saying, okay, well, making sure that that's tolerable, then I think self-sovereign Bitcoin is the way to do it, because I think it would be absolutely devastating if you put a lot of money into MSTR or Metaplanet or something like that, and it got seized away while Bitcoin continues to go up. That would be kind of like the Laszlo's 10,000 Bitcoin pizza buys or whatever. It wouldn't be very easy to live with yourself. And I don't know. People optimize for different things, but like I said, exposure to Bitcoin is not Bitcoin, and I say that kind of as not just as a way to say that self-custody is different than non-self-custody, but people have different risk profiles, and yeah, it's more work to self-custody and do all that, and maybe it's a little more fun and scratches your greed itch to have a little bit of a more leverage play on Bitcoin, even if you have to trust centralized players. But this is where long term, what happens to you, what happens to the money that you have, that's where all this kind of plays out. And I suspect the people that are self-custodying will make out much better than the people that are optimizing for a little bit more yield here and there. I just don't think it's as worth it as people think it is.
I'm not sure if it's entirely just in search for more yield. Like the other week, I sat down and my family and I reviewed our self-custody setup. And the phrases that I heard from all of them is, this is why people don't do Bitcoin. I would never do this if you didn't set this up for us, right? And so if you have your entire savings in Bitcoin, yes, there is no decay risk to Bitcoin, but there is absolute 100% decay if you lose it in self-custody. Now, I'm self-sovereign. I have put the time and the effort to set that up, but as my family, are they ready and they prepared? That's on me to have them prepared. So the reason I have other investments outside of Bitcoin, and they're leveraged Bitcoin plays, and you can actually debate the word leverage there with the perpetual preferred model that MSTR and the like are putting out. But it's an opportunity to protect me and my family from the Bitcoin, or from spending or losing said Bitcoin. So I wouldn't say it's solely a protect or trying to get more yield or more amplification or more returns. Yes, that's there. The financial rails that are kind of built and in place, though we all don't trust them, are they going to break tomorrow? Probabilistically not. And these products, can be in structure. They can be passed on to your heirs with a bit more, with the current system, a bit more. You can know that that's going to get to them, where you don't necessarily know if your brother is going to know what to do when you pass and where you've buried the Bitcoin. So.
You could just sort of collaboratively custody with Unchained or something like that and take care of that. I think that these are solved problems, honestly. And
I understand that. I'm just saying that the people that I've brought into Bitcoin have all told me that this is too much for them. So it's kind of meeting people where they're at. And so
and this is the thing, right? People want exposure, but they don't realize what they're giving up is the self-sovereignty aspect. And in a sense, you have to earn your right to self-custody. It's a lot of work, and people don't want to do it. That's on them. That's their fault. If they don't want to do it and they would rather own shares of MSTR or Stretch or whatever, I mean, you're not going to get the same sort of guarantees that you have if you're self-custody. And I feel honestly a little bit sorry for them because they're not seeing the system for what it is and all the different ways in which it can screw you over.
Can I also ask you? Sorry.
No.
Go ahead, Leanne.
No, I just wanted to ask Ben a question as well, but you were about to answer, so I can ask you after. But my question to you, Ben, also, because we've also discussed this in private, and I know I find the credit suite of strategy. I understand what they're doing, of course. I mean, I'm engaged with it like intellectual level. Just personally, the question to you, like for example, you know very well that, for example, let's say the yield that you'll get on a Stretch, for example, is interesting as income, but you give up so much upside. I just want to kind of understand, is it because an individual, for example, let's say, I don't know, mother, or she doesn't want to hold Bitcoin, so of course I could do for her. She wants income, so I could Stretch for her. It would be much easier, or STR or Strive, because they also have the upside component. But how much work would you be willing to invest to convince someone, for example, that the self-sovereign aspect is more important, so to say? So how do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I've been in Bitcoin for 5 years and I've been screaming from the rooftops, and I've brought in a handful of people, and those handful of people tell me that this is a lot of work. This is not something that they're prepared to do on their own. So in terms of strategy, you kind of alluded to, the giving up the upside because I would be taking a muted yield in a sense. I guess I would use an anecdotal. Recently I exited from my real estate position, and I was paid on October 7th. I bought Bitcoin equities October 8th, and subsequently down 40 and 60% on my position. I have to pay taxes, or I just paid taxes, but capital gains tax. And had I been a Bitcoin only, self-sovereign, I'm not going to have anything other than Bitcoin, I would have taken a massive haircut and I would have put 50% on my tax bill. But instead, I purchased Stretch just for the portion of the calculated capital gains tax. And the only thing in my investment portfolio that maintained was Stretch, and I was able to generate the yield for those 8 months. So I was able to pay that bill, withstand the volatility of Bitcoin, not have the government upset with me. And so it's not necessarily solely about generating yield as much as it's maintaining par.
Yep.
I mean, that's the problem it solves for. It's really for short-term cash needs. You have a tax bill coming up. But that's a good point, Ben. I mean, buying at the beginning of October, boom, immediately a big haircut on those holdings. And so, yeah, well, it's like with Stretch, you're not going to get the upside. Yeah, well, you're also not going to get the downside. But for low time preference, it's like I said, it's like, would I rather have a house now that's going to roughly maintain its value, or just move a little bit, or be in the Bitcoin and be at the mercy of taking a big haircut anytime, but hodling that into the future where, it will obviously, or at least we expect, would provide a significantly greater compounded annual growth rate relative to any other asset class, as long as it's just held to the long term.
I think this is a really great panel with different perspectives. I hope you guys come back again. I'm going to wrap this up. I know you guys are at the conference right now. A few of you are. So looking forward to hearing how that goes. Remember to follow all the guests. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for coming. We do debates every Tuesday at 6 p.m. now. So see you next week. Thank you guys for coming.
Bye.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Arch Lending is building the most transparent borrowing experience in crypto. Get industry-leading rates from 8.49% APR, borrow against Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Solana, and receive USD or USDC within minutes. Your assets stay protected with qualified custody, no rehypothecation, and verifiable segregated addresses. As your collateral grows, unlock more liquidity, adjust your line anytime, and extend your term with a single click. And with 24/7 white glove support, you're never on your own. Arch Lending, simple tiers, public pricing, market-leading rates at every size. Check them out at archlending.com/debates. Again, it's archlending.com/debates. Use code debates to get 50 basis points off your APR on your crypto-backed loan today.